come out to in the entire world.
Live at Red Rocks, this place is obviously epic on a myriad of levels.
We in Colorado, baby. We in Denver.
We come to Denver and make genuine connections, new partners, new agents, new managers, excellent representation, and people you can work with for the rest of your career.
I think it's so important for creators to get together because that's the future of our business. And this community really proves that we're stronger together.
Welcome to the Chinwag podcast.
Well, it's always because an audience is nice. They feed you. The energy is nice. They have a back and forth with people. Then people got up and were telling us really interesting things about themselves, and it's great.
Everything good that has ever happened in my entire career has somehow, in one way, shape, or another, come from SeriesFest. Do it again, okay? It's take two. Listen, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it right.
Richard asks me what's showing tonight.
What's going on behind me? SeriesFest, baby. It's really a celebration of creators. That's really what we're here to do, is celebrate creators on the verge of breaking into the industry.
And everybody I've met is not only interested in you personally and what you do creatively, but they want to share their story.
It's really about the community, it's really about the arts, it's about the people who make the films and the television shows. The artists come first here.
And we're doing a panel today about Hollywood disabilities and how to open up more opportunities around that.
It's actually been a great time. I'm excited for the party tonight, too. I'm excited for all the parties.
All you filmmakers out there, if you have a series that you want to get exposure, SeriesFest is the place to do it.
It'll be bigger than the NFL in 3 years.
It's like going to the best summer camp you always wished existed when you were a kid.
Beautiful day today, sunny and green, so we'll see you in season 10.
I am 2 thumbs up for season 10.
I'm Lisa Respers France. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm Lisa Respers France. I'm a senior writer with CNN Digital. And I am going to introduce these two amazing gentlemen who just produced one of the best TV episodes about TV I think we've ever seen. Agreed? Okay. I'm super excited to be here at SeriesFest, first and foremost, especially with these fabulous panelists. Been joined by another one.
Oh, hi.
I'm sorry. Hello.
Just got off the plane.
Oh, welcome.
And now I have death.
Death, right? Well, grab hold of death. Allow me to briefly introduce the folks who have joined me on stage. Mark Herzog is an Emmy Award-winning producer and director who founded Herzog & Company in 1995. His latest project, 2010s, is the last installment of the Emmy-nominated Decade series for CNN Originals, which also includes the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. Produced in partnership with Tom Hanks and Gary Goetzman's Playtone, their other collaborations include 'Tis the Season, The Holidays on Screen, The Movies, and 1968, The Year That Changed Everything. In partnership with Todd Milner and Sean Hayes of Hazy Mills, Mark was the executive producer of 2 seasons of the award-winning History of Comedy for CNN. So let's welcome Mark. Next to me, I have Kirk Saduski. He's been a producer and executive at Tom Hanks and Gary Goetzman's Playtone since 1998. He was executive in charge of the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers, as well as a co-producer of the HBO miniseries John Adams and The Pacific, and the HBO movie Game Change. Mr. Saduski was co-producer of the HBO documentary David McCullough, Painting the Words, and producer of the HBO documentary He Has Seen War. He was a co-executive producer of the CNN documentary series The 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, 1968, The Year That Changed Everything, the 2000s, to 2010s, sorry, 'Tis the Season, and the movies. Welcome, Kirk. And then we have Alysia Reiner. She's best known as SAG Award-winning Fig. We loved her on 7 seasons of Orange is the New Black. And originating agent Sadie DeVere in Miss Marvel. She just finished her 5th season as Sunny on Better Things, her 2nd season as Catherine in Stars' Shining Veil, as well as 2 seasons as Kiki on The Deuce. A few other filmed adventures include getting married in the Oscar-winning film Sideways, getting naked in an Emmy Award-winning episode of Broad City, and going head-to-head against Viola Davis on How to Get Away with Murder. Alysia developed, produced, and starred in the feature film Equity, which was brought by Sony Pictures Classic at Sundance Film Festival. She also produced and starred in EGG, which premiered at Tribeca Film Festival. She loves working as a change maker, is on the board of the Gina Davis Institute for Gender in Media and Earthy Initiative. She is a member of Resistance Revival Chorus and is a volunteer firefighter. Yes, she really is. Right. First of all, thank you all, and please remember to talk to the mic. I'm saying this to myself. Thank you all for joining us to talk about this incredible episode, which was so good. But I want to start with the franchise in and of itself, and then we'll drill down with this episode. So I wanted to start, Mark, by asking you, because people here love to know what pitches, were really successful. Clearly, this was a successful one. I want to ask you and Kirk, how was this pitched? How was this franchise pitched?
There was an executive at CNN named Vinny Malhotra. He was at Showtime after CNN. Now he's, I think, with Higher Ground, the Obama's production company. And he knew that I worked with the folks at Playtone, Tom Hanks, Gary Goetzman's company, where Kirk is. And he just said, God, it'd be great if we could somehow, do something. Oh, but Playtone's with HBO. And they were, at the time, connected to HBO. Oh, but we're brother companies. I wonder if there's something we can do. And Kirk and I ended up going into CNN, and we started thinking about stuff to do, and we were talking about maybe we do something on the presidents that would fit the Playtone thing, and then Vinny says, God, the anniversary of JFK's assassination is coming up, and we don't have any programming for that. And I said, well, Tom had this great idea about doing something about the Warren Commission and how they got it right, and it never happened, but I've been researching it for 6 years or something, and he goes, we want that. And that turned into the 60s. Jeff Zucker said, well, let's take that one episode and then turn it into a whole series called the 60s, which obviously goes well with Playtone. Tom Hanks did That Thing You Do, loves the Beatles and all that. And so we made the 60s, and the audience went for it. That's how it started, basically.
So it wasn't envisioned as doing decades. It just started with the 60s.
It was an accident. And here we are 10 years later.
A
very happy
accident.
Very happy accident. Kirk, you've taught a class in dramatizing nonfiction. What has working on this franchise taught you?
Well, stay close to the story, always. I'll follow up a little bit on what Mark said, because one of the great things, and I think to follow up on your point, is that once Jeff and Vinny and Amy said, okay, let's expand it, not just the special on the assassination of President Kennedy, but also the 60s at large, and then they just let us do it. They didn't really, they just gave us 10 episodes and said, pick the topics and go do it. And I think, and I was teaching at the time, and it stay as close to, and keep in mind what your story is. Never let, even in a format like this, never let your story get too far away from you. The characters, of course, but always keep that at the center of your concerns.
Let's drill down on the episode we just watched, which was excellent, by the way. Didn't everybody enjoy it? Laugh out loud. So many laugh out loud moments. So, Alysia, I wanted to ask you, because you started in Orange is the New Black, which kicked off binge watching for so many of us. So I'd like to blame you and thank you at the same time. So how has it been for you, just thinking about the 2010s in terms of television, since you were right at the forefront? You literally are an OG of binge watching.
I think I have sort of two answers to that. The first is, I remember when when Orange first came out, and Netflix wasn't comfortable with the word binge. They actually really didn't like it. It had a very bad negative connotation before this. When you think about the word binge, you think about a drinking binge or a food binge, not a good word. And they kept on saying, no, avoid that word. Please avoid that word. And I was like, okay. And I would be asked, do you binge? And I would say, the cool thing about streaming, which to me, that's really what happened in 2010 in entertainment as we started this streaming thing, is you get to choose. And I would always say, some people can have a gallon of ice cream in their freezer for a long period of time and have a couple of scoops a day, a couple of teaspoons a day. That tends to be my style. Some people like to eat the whole thing. And the power is in the audience. And that's what's new. And that's what's interesting, is empowering the audience about how they want to watch things. That's what's really, really interesting to me. I'm right now binging Beef. It's very bingeable. Y'all should all binge or gently enjoy The Diplomat, because my best friend made that.
Oh, yeah.
My best friend,
Oh, yeah.
Deborah Kahn, my best friend. So I will say that. And then the other thing that I will say is what's amazing and miraculous when we think about these moments is when I got Orange in 2012. I was at the theater. I was at a Broadway show, and it was a premiere, and a very, very fancy casting director was there who had never taken me seriously, but loved my husband and always cast him and everything. And David, my sweet husband, was like, Alysia got this job, and Jenji Cohen, and it's Netflix. It's this new stream. They're doing this new thing, and I will never forget because he said, "Well, good luck with that little web series." And it was a very, that's people. We didn't have a conception of what was possible, and now we know. And things have really changed and disrupted. And for the writers out there, and I stand in solidarity with all of the writers out there, it's deeply important that we again disrupt in this moment how we're seeing artists and how we're valuing artists. And that's incredibly important in this moment because that's why we're on strike.
Thank you. For Mark and Kirk, I wanted to ask you guys, how did you decide what TV shows were going to be included in this episode? I mean, Breaking Bad was obvious, but how did you decide the rest?
Well, the funny thing is we actually covered Breaking Bad in the 2000s television episode, but it became so much bigger in the 2010s. We mentioned that being on Netflix. We covered it again. The joke that we always say is your favorite TV show won't be in this episode because inevitably we're going to lose something. We're going to forget something. We're going to just not have time for it. I don't know how many TV shows are in here. It's probably 60 or 70. But it really was about what really changed the zeitgeist. Or is a New Black clearly did that, and we gave it a lot of love to it. We gave it a lot of love to Game of Thrones and to Master of None and a bunch of other shows. But it just wasn't about that. I think it was also about having people, certain critics, for example, mention shows like Rectify, which I personally never saw, but he loved it, and he tells people about it, and hopefully people watching this will go, I'm going to go check it out, because you can now that things are streaming. So, yeah, it's a hard decision.
I think, too, the shows kind of select themselves in a way. One of the things we've kept in mind doing the entire, all of the series going back to the 60s, is that we want it to be more than just topical, so that when you go back and look at some of our previous series, the shows that stand out today while you're watching it were the shows that stood out then. And so I think that becomes, we had to look, what will people be still watching and talking about in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years. So I think that's because we want it to be perennial. We don't want it to just be about right now, because so much, we want it to feel format-wise immediate and right now, but we want it to have a perennial appeal.
I want to ask you too also, having done so many of these in the franchise, how has your relationship with CNN been? The greatest network in the world. Quote me on that. How has it been and how has it grown?
Rashika and Lyle from CNN are here and have been great in helping us shape this decade. It is our last decade, which is kind of sad. We've run out of decades. We'll see you in 10 years to do the 2020s.
Wait, is that a climate change thing that you're talking about?
I would say, I think, and we talked about this last night, and we were talking about with Rashika and Lyle, I think it's inconceivable we could have done it anywhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, two things. One, as I mentioned before, Mark, and I think you would agree. I mean, they gave us extraordinary freedom. They rarely pushed back when we proposed topics, and some of the topics in some of the decades in some of the series are pretty tough.
Yeah.
I remember when we did the 80s and we suggested we wanted to do an episode on the AIDS crisis, and there was a hesitation, but when we explained how we were going to do it, and Jeff Sucker and Amy immediately said, yes, go ahead. So I think I can't imagine that. HBO was the same kind of way, but this is not the HBO kind of show. I can't imagine any other network we would have done this show with. Certainly Playtone would not have.
Smart TV. That's what CNN Originals did.
You guys cover so much in this episode, and one of the things that was of interest to me was the conversation about the rise of the female showrunner and how women are portrayed. And Alysia, you've gotten to work with some incredible female showrunners. How's that experience been for you?
It's been amazing, you know, and when I talk about why I produce, it's to create more roles for women and to have more women behind and in front of the camera. And I don't know that I would have ever done that if I hadn't watched Genji do it, if I hadn't watched Pamela do it, if I hadn't watched Shonda do it. Ava's an incredible example. And in all cases, there's women who are deeply interested in uplifting others, which is to me what it's all about. And it's a remarkable moment in entertainment because that has changed. And it's really, really exciting. And as I am on the board of Gina Davis Institute, which is all about if we can see it, we can be it. And I can say personally, I experienced that where I really don't think I would have produced had I not seen, another amazing showrunner, Lena Dunham, Lena Waithe. Like, we can now name them, and there are many, and that's remarkable.
Did you want to say? I wanted to ask the question because one of the things that struck me as I was watching this, how you all were able to tie in how incredibly important television is to our culture and how influential it is. Can each of you remember a particular show or a moment or an episode that was really influential to you as you were coming up in this industry, or it could have been when you were a child? If you want to lie so that people don't know how old you are, this is a safe space. Feel free to do that.
Green Acres.
Green Acres. Yeah. What was it about Green Acres?
I don't know. It would talk about taking like Schitt's Creek, taking the rich people, bringing them into the non-Beverly Hills. I don't know. Something worked about that. And Ava Gabor was brilliant to me.
As growing up in the '60s, I would say for sure that the Dick Van Dyke Show and primarily the Twilight Zone. Mm-hmm. It talk about storytelling. If more than any single, probably individual, certainly any show, would be Rod Serling, and he was able to take very complex moral situations and tell it clearly and entertainingly and compellingly in 22 minutes. And it was sort of O. Henry meets Aesop's Fable, and no question, the Twilight Zone was the most influential to me.
Yeah, Girls. When I was a little girl and I watched Girls, no. You mentioned Twilight Zone, and I remember watching Twilight Zone with my dad, and I feel the same way sort of about Black Mirror.
Yes, very much.
But I would say I think I'm very specifically thinking about the show we just watched, and for me, being part of Orange was like an outrageous gift to be able to be part of that storytelling and how we see incarceration, and it's something I'm deeply active in, and also undocumented people, and also trans people. So like we were able to tell stories about 3 populations that had never really been explored before in television. So, and I'm fully biased. And I'll also say, you know, Transparent was like that for me. I think it's really, really, really important, particularly in this moment when we're looking at the bans and when we're looking at so much pushback. And what I like to remember is pushback only happens when there's power forward. You know, when we're silent about things and it's not a big deal, nobody pushes against. And what's happening in our culture in this moment is heartbreaking to me. And to me, it proves that we are moving forward I have to see it that way. I have to see it in that hopeful way. So yeah, those are a couple.
Can I add one last Rod Serling kudo?
Absolutely.
When I was teaching, and I still, even at Playtone, we talk internally when we're trying to develop things. There's sort of a question. What's your theme? How would Rod Serling have done it in 22 minutes? And then go from there.
Love that. And Alysia, something that you said struck me because, of course, you guys touched on it in this episode about Orange is the New Black and the representation that we see. Given how the country is now, do you think the show, had it premiered now, would it be as embraced as it was back then?
I sure hope so. I don't want to cry. My heart is very broken about where we are as a culture in this moment. It makes me really sad. Clearly,
I'm sorry.
No. It's, you know, this is what art is about, right? It touches us, it moves us, and when we think about it, when we see it, and I sure hope so, and I hope. You know, I hope that were to come out today, maybe it would bring us closer if it was something we could connect over, because there were so many different humans from so many different backgrounds, including an Aryan character, you know, like who changed. And to me, the point of that show is we're all one mistake away, right? And honoring our humanity and our imperfections, and all that means. So I sure hope so, but I don't know anything.
I think what Kirk was saying earlier is that we're trying to emphasize within this decade shows that are timeless, that you'll be talking about 10 years from now. But I think it really shows that good writing is good writing, and it doesn't matter when it comes out. I mean, history for me is, you know, a good story is a good story. It doesn't matter when it happened. And Orange has great writing, so it doesn't matter if it comes out now, came out 20 years ago. It's good writing, it's good storytelling. That's why we talk about Twilight Zone. It was great writing, and it lasts time. So,
well, this in and of itself was great storytelling. So thank you both for that. And Mark, I want to ask you, I know early in your career, you're the reason why we have such amazing extras and special features on some of our favorite DVDs. How did that part of your career prepare you for this franchise?
I do a lot of making ofs. I've been on 200 movie sets or something and doing making ofs. But it's storytelling, it's documentary. You're telling the story of how a movie's made, and that translated into making documentaries. The first documentary I made was with Playtone, and it was We Stand Alone Together, which was the Band of Brothers true story. We are in the middle of making a documentary about the bombers of World War II, the B-17 pilots and crew, which is a companion documentary to a new series come out on Apple Plus. So 23 years later, we're
Masters
still
of the Air.
Masters of the Air. So yeah, it helped me turn my brain at the world of documentaries. So.
And Kirk, what are your feelings with this coming to an end since we've run out of years? How do you feel about that?
Greatly saddened. Truly though, because I mean, one, we just had so much fun doing this. I mean, we all got to meet people. Whoever I got to interview in Washington D.C. about 10 years ago now. I sat this close to John Lewis and talked to him about the Edmund Pettus Bridge. What was it like, and on and on. I mean, so the combination of being that and just being able, I think more than anything. And Mark, tell me if you agree. We've heard now from so many schools. You and I we talked about this last night. Schools, high schools, and colleges that use our show in their classes. There's nothing that I'm sure makes Mark happier, me, and I know Tom and Gary. I know that that's the single thing that makes them proudest. I'll tell you, when we've talked about this, Tom has told us that he's approached by more people about this series than anything else he's ever done. That sounds crazy. How could that be? Everything he's done, but he said it several times. So, well, of course, we're sad to see it come to an end.
Well, we want to go backwards. We want to do the 50s, the 40s, the 30s.
Exactly.
Why do you guys think it resonates so strongly with us?
A lot of people didn't necessarily have the vibrant history teacher they should have had in high school, or they had a great history teacher and they wanted more and didn't get it. I think we encapsulate sort of just a small version of the history of each decade. And a lot of times what we hear is, oh my God, I wish I was born in the 60s, to, oh, I was living that time, and that's exactly how I remember it. I mean.
I think also we don't have an agenda, and we don't have a editorial point of view. We've always said that we're the front section of the newspaper. We're not the op-ed page, or let alone the editorial page. And I think that's really helped us, is that and it's not that we don't have a perspective. You know, when you're going back to Vietnam, I mean, we're critical, but with perspective. That's become harder. I'll be honest. And Mark and I have talked about it a lot. The 2010s, it's more current events than 50-year-old history. So we'll see how that plays. But be still trying to play it as not centrist as much, but like I said, as you would on the front page of your newspaper. What's the kind of information that you want? And just make it, and then we were lucky enough to we have to give our kudos to our editors and our producers. We have a different producing team for every episode, and they really immerse themselves in these topics and really get to know it, and then work with an editor. And a lot of the laughs that you got out of this episode was because of editorial decisions. So, of course, we're going to miss it.
We start the series this Sunday on CNN at 9 o'clock. 8 o'clock.
Tell all your friends.
With this episode, it's 2 hours. There's another 2-hour episode. It ends the series. It's on the year 2020. And when you put we all lived it. We all had our own version of 2020. But when you put all those events together in a 2-hour episode, it's unbelievably powerful. It's scary. And so even though it's recent history, it's not quite how you remember it.
And I think the format, there's an immediacy to it. When we first did the 60s, when we kind of came up with, oh yeah, we had seen a show that was produced a long time ago and it was similar, we can do this. And it would almost, how do we compete with the kind of journalism, the cell phone journalism? And we thought doing it this way, take news footage primarily, without a narrator, and then punctuate it with people who are either there or can comment on it expertly, on whatever the topic is expertly, and that will draw people in and make them feel like they're there, even if it was 50 years ago.
They're making me wrap this up. I wish I had another hour to talk to you guys. I just want to thank all three of you for your passion, your authenticity, and for your great art.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.